Peace, ladies and gentlemen. I am Gandhi the Zoe, your host for the Principles of a Prophet's podcast. As usual, we're here for another episode, the sixth episode, and the first season of our podcast, I'm quite grateful for those of y'all who have been following and engaging on a regular basis. I ask you to continue to do so. As usual, don't forget to subscribe, comment, share your ideas, your disagreements, etc., and also share the episodes so that others might become aware what it is that we're doing. On today's episode, we're going to switch mode, right? As in the last two episodes, our focus were on the Haitian problem, Haiti, its history, its culture. It was very, we went semi-viral with the last two episodes on social media, specifically or particularly with the Haitian community. A lot of people on social media of Haitian background or Haitian supporters felt very passionately about my position, but that was to be expected, and it was also welcomed. So today we're switching gears. We're entering more into what I would say is a more historic, well, we're continuing with the history, but we're going back in time to the 7th century in a sense, and to the 3rd century approximately. We're going to have a theological discussion and etymological discussion also. So what is the topic about? I say it is specifically about a discussion that I've had with some Muslim acquaintances of mine. I often actually have discussion with these acquaintances. We discuss politics, philosophy, religion, etc. And about a week or so ago, one of the gentlemen whom I usually engage with in these types of discussion, he brought to my attention, or he wanted to bring to my attention, should I say, that he's seems to have discovered suddenly that the Prophet Muhammad, the prophet of the Islamic religion, was apparently mentioned and prophesied in the Bible. And he sent me subsequently a video from a Muslim scholar, I believe. I'm not quite familiar with him. His name is Ahmed, or was Ahmed Didat, or he's passed away, I believe. So R.I.P. So I watched the excerpt in the video, and in the video, the gentleman basically was talking. I guess it seemed his public was more Muslim, but in the video, what he was saying is that the Prophet Muhammad was prophesied in the biblical corpus, and specifically he chose, there's a book, for those of y'all who are not familiar with the texts in the Bible, there's a book called the Song of Songs, and popular in the popular area or milieu, it is often referred to as the Song of Solomon, this book, the 5th chapter and 16th verse. And this gentleman was saying that in the Hebrew version, which is the original language of most of the text of the Bible, excuse me, something's in my eye, and the Hebrew version, the gentleman was saying that there's a place, or there's a section in the 16th verse of the 5th chapter where it makes reference to Muhammad. Let me read y'all, first of all, for those of y'all who are not acquainted with the Bible, I'll read you what the text says in English, right? And this is the NIV version, New International Version, because there are different translations or different versions of translations of the Bible available. So Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs, the 5th chapter, the 16th verse, here's what it says. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem. And then it ends. Now, the gentleman quoted this, and he said that in the English translation, there is a meaning that was lost in the process of translation. I don't recall in the video if if the reason for this loss of translation, if he gave a reason for it, or if he felt it was conspiratorial, or if he felt it was by error. But the emphasis was that in that verse that I just read, you see the place where it says, he is altogether lovely. The word from which they've translated altogether lovely, excuse me, in the Hebrew is a word, Muhammadim. Now, this is a Hebrew word, Muhammadim, and as you can hear phonetically, there's the sound Muhammad in it. So the gentleman was saying that this text and that particular word there was referring to the prophet of the Islamic religion. And yes, unfortunately, they mistranslated the text, and therefore people are not aware of that. And he gave a lot of reasons as per why. For example, he explained that Muhammadim is a plural in the Hebrew, in general in Semitic languages, right? So Arabic, Ugarit, and Hebrew, among others, right? And the Semitic languages, there are plural forms. And he was saying that Muhammadim is a plural form of respect, somewhat like a word like, there's another Hebrew word that is Elohim. This is a word that is often translated into the English as God. He was saying that these terms, although they're plural, right, in terms of form, morphologically, the way that they're written is plural, for they have the ending im. And in Hebrew, every time you see, well, generally when you see the ending im, it implies that the word is a masculine plural. He was saying, though, Muhammadim and words like Elohim, they are terms of respect. So as such, he's implying that Muhammadim is referred in the 5th chapter of the 16th verse of Song of Solomon or Song of Song. It's basically a term of respect, prophesying the prophet. So as I watched this video, I called my friend after. I've thought about it. I went and read the text myself in Hebrew. I did a quick research, and obviously being familiar with biblical Hebrew, or classical Hebrew, I knew by first impression, I knew that this could not be so for many reasons, which I'm going to explain. But again, I went and reviewed the text myself and called the acquaintance and basically told him, no, this is not what it means. And I explained it to him. And upon having my discussion with him about why Muhammadim is not a prophecy for the Prophet Muhammad, I thought, this could be a good topic of a good presentation anyway for the podcast. For what reason? Well, there are a lot of people in the world who are people of faith, right? Specifically of the 3 Abrahamic faiths, i.e. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And often the people are not, although they are religious and they're familiar with the texts such as the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, a lot of them, the majority, I would say, of the lay people of these faiths don't know the original languages. And therefore, often what they're getting is translation. And in general, in translation, if the translation is not done accurately and meticulously, often ideas and senses of words and concepts are lost. And being that I have a background in this field, right, in the field of biblical history or biblical studies, and more specifically the Hebrew Bible, actually, and and it's the history of the Hebrew Bible and its relationship to the ancient Near East, I felt, hey, perhaps I could also contribute publicly in this discussion. Now, my aim is not to be a demagogue or to to be adversarial, or negatively adversarial. No, it is simply because I'm about truth. This podcast, this is what it is about, right? Part of the objective is pedagogical. I felt that I could be a public voice, right? Bringing information to the public, to those who may be interested, about a variety of topics and subjects, and again, specifically when it comes to religious history or ideas, Western ideas in their sources, or should I say their origins and antiquity. So all of this to say that I'm not here to attack a Muslim or religious folks. It is more to bring insight and clarity. So that being said, let us move on to the heart of the matter. So here's what it is, gentlemen, ladies. In Hebrew, here's what the text say. So I'll try to have transcripts of the Hebrew text. Perhaps if I don't have it in the episode, if you don't see it in the episode itself, you'll see it in the comments. And I'll also have references of some of the, because we're going to get into a little bit of Hebrew grammar, right? Classical Hebrew grammar. So I'll put all references to grammar books and authors or scholars whom I referred to for this episode down below before the comments, and you'll have access to them. So, and if you want to verify if I was to make sure that I'm not BSing y'all, you could do that. But also, if after this episode you should gain an interest for this subject and this topic, hey, you'll already have some references, right, to make use of. So in the Hebrew, here's how the text read, and then I'm going to give y'all a rough translation that I've made myself. So it goes, Hiko mamtakim wekulo mahamadim ze dovdi vze rei benot Yerushalayim. So this is the Hebrew of the verse that I just read you previously in the English, the NIV version. Here's my rough translation. This is my loved one. This is my fellow, daughters of Jerusalem. His mouth is of sweetness and he is of attractiveness. So I try to give a accurate rendering of what I see the words, or well, the author, what I think the authors and the composers were trying to do when they wrote this text in Hebrew, according to how they place, the syntax, the word usage, etc., right? And this is what I came up with. And so where you see that I've translated of attractiveness, this is the Hebrew Mahamadim. Now, I believe that the gentleman, Ahmed D. Either he doesn't, because he seemed to know how to read Hebrew, because in the video, he read the Hebrew verse. And when I listened to it, it was accurate Hebrew. His pronunciation, his reading is much better than mine is. But I think it's either this gentleman was disingenuous, which I hope he wasn't. I doubt he was. I think that he doesn't understand classical or biblical Hebrew grammar, hence why, well, it seems it's not just him, because after I watched his video, I saw other scholars, specifically Muslim scholars, make the same mistake. And his video, actually, they share it also as proof or as evidence for this claim. What claim that this particular book, chapter 5, verse 16, make reference, a prophetic reference to the Prophet Muhammad. So I believe that this gentleman, he did not know classical Hebrew grammar, and subsequently the other people who are sharing the video or who are making similar claim, they also don't understand biblical Hebrew grammar. Let me explain to you why. Let's get into a little bit of the grammar, right? First, let us situate the text. So in the Bible, let me tell y'all something. For those of y'all who don't know, who are not aware of this, the Bible as religious text is often read as one book, a book that contains a specific story that starts from beginning to end, right? So it's like a narrative. However, technically, the Bible is not one cohesive story from beginning to end. In fact, the Bible consists of several books. And the word Bible itself, right, it comes from a word, from a Greek and Latin word. It was translated in Latin later, ta biblia, right, which from which basically what it means is a library of books. So in fact, the Bible itself, right, is a library of books. So for example, you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Song of Songs, of which we're talking today, etc. All of these are specific books, right, in their own way. And these books, each of these books that are represented in the Bible, they are also, the way that they're composed and constructed, they are of particular literary genres. So often, as I said, the avid, regular, or common reader is not taking into account, okay, what I've just said here, right? When they're reading, they're simply reading it for devotional purposes, right? So they don't realize that, okay, I'm reading a particular type of literature from the ancient world, and that literature has certain conventions by which we are to read them. So explicitly, here's what I mean. Song of Solomon, right, or Song of Songs, it's a specific book and the biblical corpus, or the library of books that is commonly referred to as the Bible. Song of Solomon, it is what kind of genre, what kind of literary genre is the Song of Solomon, this book? This book is more of a poetry or poetic or song type of book, right? Hence the name or the title, Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. And in contrast to what? So you may have in the Bible, you have what is called prophetic literature. These literature that are categorized as prophetic, what they are is basically books wherein you find there's a particular figure or figures who are deemed to be prophets. And these people, they have these characters anyway. The people who compose these texts use these characters to speak certain messages in the name of the divinity, right? In the name of God. So this is basically, in general, this is what the prophetic books are about. So when you read them, there are certain characteristics that you're going to find across the board. So same thing with literature such as a song or a poem, right? There are particular characteristics and traits by which you recognize them. So the Song of Song or Song of Solomon is a poetic book. Its genre is poetic or a song. And even more specifically, it is a love song, an erotic love song at that. Often, right, most, say, priests and people of the clergy, right, whether in Judaism or Christianity, they're aware of this. Hence, traditionally, right, in both of these religions, the way that the Song of Songs, right, that book has been received or interpreted is, by receive, I mean, it was composed, right, sometime approximately maybe around the 3rd century BCE, right? That's before the Common Era in antiquity. And as history evolved, as history developed, right, people had access to this literature, right? And when Judaism became, right, an official religion, and the books of the Bible are canonized for it to become the Bible or the Tanakh in Judaism, the way that the religion received these texts, right, is, and then the way they interpreted them is allegorically. They didn't, so the Song of Solomon as a love, as an erotic love song in the religion of Judaism and also in Christianity, the way that it was received or interpreted is not as what it is or what it was intended to be. It is more allegorically that it was interpreted. So they basically said that the book is a poem that is metaphorical and nature, using a male and a female lovers to express the love between the divinity, Hashem for the Jews, and God for the Christian, and that divinity's relationship with his people, i.e. the believers or Israel, and in the case of Christianity, the church. So they say that this is an allegory of the relationship, the love relationship between God and the church, or between God and ancient Israel, or I guess Jewish people in the modern time. But that is not what this book was. Initially, it's a love poem in ancient Israel, composed to express the love between a man and a woman, and an erotic love at that, right? Now, I don't doubt that there might have been some religious dimension to the composition, right? Why do I say this? Because the notion of religion that we have today is not how the ancient people understood it, right? Religion, there was no such thing as religion per se in antiquity. What I mean by that is, in antiquity, what today we deem as religion, right? So the way we conceptualize our lives in our world today, and more specifically the Western world, is there's, common or secular life, and there's the religious life. In antiquity, it was not so. The way the people believed was that their gods, their ideas of their gods, was as real as this microphone is to me today, right? So the people believed the gods were active in their reality. So as such, the way that they lived, the way of their culture, their lifestyle was based on their understandings of the gods and the realities of the gods, right? And their interaction of the gods with their reality. So you see, there's no separation between church and state, technically, in antiquity, right? So that's why I say that I don't doubt that there might have been some religious connotation to the text when it was composed, but primarily, right, what it is an erotic love song. So now going back to the grammar, now that I've given y'all some context in terms of its genre, right? It's an erotic love song, which was most likely composed. We don't really know because we don't have any conclusive evidence as per the time of its composition, but the vocabulary and certain elements of the text, scholars has deemed, based on that, those evidences, scholars had deemed the text to be written during the post-exilic period, sometime around the 3rd century BCE, right, before the Common Era, as I mentioned. So now that you have this as background, let's dive into some grammar, okay? In Hebrew, words basically are formed with letters, obviously, but mainly consonants, right? And so they are what you call stem or root words, right? These root words consist of generally 3 consonants, 2 or 3 consonants, right? And from these root words, other words can be constructed by adding, other elements, to these words. So, and Hebrew also, just like a modern language, English, French, etc., there are 3 categories of number, okay, to be considered in connection with Hebrew nouns. So in English and French, we have 2 categories that I'm aware of. It's singular and plural, right? In English and French grammar. And in Hebrew, there are 3. They are singular, plural, and dual. Plural nouns have special endings that generally correspond to their gender. So if it's a masculine, or whether it's a masculine or feminine noun, they each have a certain way that the plural and the dual forms are constructed. Most masculine nouns, for example, have plurals that end with 2 or 3 characters in Hebrew. For example, with the masculines, it's im. Im consists of a letter, yud, and this letter basically phonetically, and English and French, the way that you would pronounce this is either as a I, E, in English, I in English, E en français, or Y, right? Hence the sound yud. So the yud plus another letter, mem in Hebrew. The mem, as you can hear phonetically, M, right? This is one of the M letters in Hebrew, plus a vowel character called a hirik. So the hirik you place the hirik with the yud, it gives the sound yi, and then, or yi, and then added to it the mem, you get im. This is how you construct a masculine plural form, right? With a root noun in Hebrew. Most feminine nouns have plurals that end in ot. Ot consists of two letters also. So it's a vav. The vav is a letter that is often translated in English and French as a V or a W. However, with a vowel character on it or with it, the vocalization changes. So how do we get the sound O? Is because there's what you call a holem that is added on the on the vav that makes the sound O. And you add to this O sound a second letter, which is tav. The tav is a T letter in Hebrew. You get the ending, the feminine plural ending, ot. The third number classification for Hebrew nouns is jewel. It's usually used to designate things that occur in pairs, especially the organs of the body, but they can also be used for certain indications of time. The jewel ending is normally written, the jewel ending, right, is the way that it ends, just like I've told you how the plural ending for masculine is and the plural ending for feminine is. And the dual ending is with a letter yud, the same letter that we talked about earlier for the masculine plural. The mem, we've already discussed, is the M sound. But added to it, right, to make the dual form in Hebrew, it's added to it, there's a hirik, right, with the E sound, and also an accented patak. The patak is a vowel or an accent that makes the sound ah, right? Like patak, right? A father, I believe, right, is patak. Not quite sure yet, but the sound, yes, ah. Right, so you get the dual ending yam. So whenever, or generally when you see a word that ends with yam, that means it's a dual number word. So it's patak, hirik with a yud, and a final mem. That gives you the dual ending. Now, for reasons that are no longer clear, according to some scholars, that is, some nouns appear to have dual endings, but without any dual meaning. For example, words they give is, there's a word mayim, there's another shamayim. Mayim is what is translated as water, and shamayim is what's translated as sky or heaven. Now, my intuition, or my understanding is there's most likely a reason why these those dual words, they say they don't have dual meaning, but maybe they originally did. Because in Hebrew, or in antiquity anyway, right, in the ancient Near East, and with the people of ancient Israel, the people who have composed these texts, the idea of water, right, generally you have two sources of water, sweet water and salty water, right? So two. And there's also this notion that you have waters below the land and waters within or even under, right? So maybe that's why they came up conceptually with these dual endings, mayim. Same thing for heaven, shamayim, as it is believed that you had multiple levels of the heavens or the skies, hence possibly why you have the dual ending. So I've just explained to you the three categories of number that you have in Hebrew. This is going to be very important because remember the word in Hebrew that these scholars or adherents of this particular Islamic view are saying is used in the Hebrew Bible as a prophecy for Muhammad is Muhammadim. Okay? So you see it ends with a im. Now, most grammarians and exegetes assume that plural forms for some nouns refers to a special or exalted person or superior deity or person, the so-called honorific plural or pluralis majestatis. So what it is see, and so we have a word, for example, in Hebrew, like a word like Elohim, right? The word that is often translated into God. This word, as you can see, Elohim, it has a plural ending, im, right? A masculine plural ending. However, traditionally, the way that this word has been translated, right, in Judaism and Christianity is as God, capital G-O-D. But remember, the ending is a plural ending, right? Im. So technically, right, if we're to follow the rule, okay, the grammatical rule about the way numbers, right, plural number words are constructed in Hebrew, this would be gods, right, or Dieu with a X at the end to denote the plurality of the word. But it is not so. Why? Because generally, scholars and exegetes are people who do translation and interpretation of text. These people have often understood this word Elohim as an honorific plural or pluralis majestatis in Latin, right? So these types of words, they're plural in form, right? But they're considered to be singular, right? And hence the term honorific, because for these scholars or grammarians, they deem these words to represent some people that have high esteem or some people that have high standings, right, in the society or in a particular organization. Hence the word Elohim, they say it's an honorific that represents God, right? And I think that this is where actually Ahmed Didat, when you watch his video, the Muslim gentleman who I first heard made that proposition, he mentioned that clearly. He says, look, in Arabic, people who speak Arabic, right? He says even specifically the Christians, they know this because in Arabic, it's the same rule, right? Such words like Elohim, they're known to be honorific. So for him, Muhammadim is also an honorific plural, right? A plural word that, although its form is plural, but its referent is singular, right? And my position, though, is different. Based on a research or study from a scholar named Joel S. Burnett, right? It seems that the singular Elohim, right? But the reason we say singular is what I just explained to you, because it has a plural form, but it's often used in singular context, or it often has singular reference, right? So hence we say the singular Elohim. There's an ancient language called Ugarit. It's an ancient Semitic language, right? Just like Arabic and Hebrew. And so this in Ugarit and, for example, Arabic, they're cognate languages to Hebrew, which means they're part of the same family. Hence, we use the word cognate. And Ugarit, there's a singular, ilanu. It's a plural form that functions in singularness, right, called the singular ilanu. This word also is a word that is used for God, but it is, again, but its form is plural. And this word, though, the scholar Joel S. Burnett in his research, he says that this word is a variety of a category, right, in grammar that is called an abstract plural, as opposed to an honorific plural. According to another grammar, Genesius, I will have all these references above the comment for y'all. Genesius says that the plurals in Hebrew express the idea of collectivity. They do not simply serve to communicate notions of quantity, right? And abstract plurals, as I've just mentioned, generally end with im suffixes, just like the regular plural form ends with, masculine plural form ends with im. This grammar, Genesius, says that the plurals, they don't just convey the idea of quantity, they also convey the notion, they can be used to convey the notion of collectivity. Hence, they're categorized as abstract plurals. And in Hebrew, you have such words such as ketulim, zekunim, and you also have a word, benot. Benot is the plural form, actually, of a feminine word in Hebrew called bina. From bina, you get benot, and that means understanding. Now, these words, they're considered to be abstract plurals and Hebrew grammar. And what they do is they sum up either the conditions or qualities inherent in an idea of a stem. A stem is, like I say, the root of a word, right? And so Genesius's grammar does not, or Genesius, or more specifically Joel S. Burnett, I should say, in his research, he does not agree that the concept of plural of majesty or the concept of honorific plural was present in the royal or noble vernacular of the Canaanite rulers of the Amarna period, as some scholars presume, because of scarcity of explicit examples. Basically, he didn't find enough evidence for him to agree that these plural forms, right, that we've just mentioned, such as Elohim, he doesn't agree that they're plurals of majesty or honorific plural, because when he surveyed, right, the other cognate languages, and specifically we have remnants of text from Canaan around the same period of time that ancient Israel is emerging and also writing, its text, right? We have other texts from the other Semitic cognate languages that uses similar, right, language, such as I just gave you an example, the Ugarit has this word ilanu, which is a plural or a singular ilanu. It's a plural form, but it functions in a singular context. So Joel S. Burnett is based on research. He didn't find any evidence, right, that there was such notion of plural of majesty and Canaanite literature or language, right? As such, he refutes this notion of plural of majesty. And I'm of the same school of thought. Burnett proposes that the use of the term concretized abstract plural is better to be used instead of plural of majesty, because he claims it is more accurate than basically the ideas being conveyed by such terms as plural of majesty or plurale modestie or plural of amplitude, right? And general grammar. He suggests that these terms like plural of majesty and plural of excellence, etc., they tend to be misleading, as they may direct one who is inattentive into understanding the plural forms as serving as adjectives to the referent. Okay? And in his view, the plural form has less to do with the object that it may be pointing to, hence the referent, and more to do with the idea associated with the stem, right? The idea that's associated with the root word, okay? Hence why it's an abstraction. So a term like Elohim, just like Ilanu, and there's another Semitic language from the Phoenicians, okay, at the same time, the word Elim, right? These terms, they're considered to be abstract plurals, okay? But these terms also have the generic sense, which can be translated as God, deity, or divine. So these words are very polyvalent, okay? Generally, the word Elohim and Ilanu, they're common nouns, okay? And as I mentioned, they're very flexible, they're polyvalent, okay? And they're more, and the Elohim, for example, the word that is usually translated as God, there are other words in Hebrew, actually, that can be used for God and that are also used for God in the Bible, okay? Such words such as El or Eloah, these are singular terms, okay? However, according to Mr. Burnett, the Elohim has more of a polyvalence to itself, okay, as opposed to words like El and Eloah. So it seems to be the reason why the writers and composers of the Hebrew text chose to use Elohim for, in many instances, for God, as opposed to El and Eloah, right? And so Muhammadim now, okay? Just like a term like Elohim basically, we would consider it to be an abstract plural. So what it's denoting, right? It's not denoting God, okay? The monotheistic God of Judaism or Christianity. The word Elohim as an abstract plural, or the singular Elohim, the way that it should be understood, an abstract plural, should be more translated as divinity. What it's conveying the idea of divineness, of being, of one being divine, right? And so Muhammadim now as an abstract plural, if you're in the same category, what is it conveying? So Muhammadim is a plural, obviously. It's from the absolute masculine singular noun, Mahmad, okay? And that word, in turn, has its roots from 3 consonant stem, Hamad. And its verbal form in Hebrew, what it means, okay, is desire. And in another Semitic language, like Aramaic, it means to take pleasure. In Arabic, it's used to denote the idea of praise, to eulogize or approve of. Hence, if I'm correct, Muhammad is actually the praised one. Okay? So Muhammadim, in fact, in the Hebrew text, right, of Song of Songs, chapter 5:16, what it is a common noun, right? It's an abstract plural. It's not a proper name. Like Muhammad is a proper name or a proper noun. Muhammadim is a common noun. Okay, so they're both functioning differently. You don't use common nouns for people, for humans, right? Humans have used proper nouns to name them. So Muhammadim, what it is doing, how it's functioning, right, is as an abstract plural. And what it's conveying is the idea, the fullness of the idea of desire. Hence, you have the plural im ending there, okay? In fact, in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, okay, the same root from which we get Muhammadim, Hamad, that root is used also in verse 6c of Genesis 3. It is used to describe how desirable the tree of knowledge of good and bad appears to the woman. So if you know that story, it is the story of, the Garden of Eden. Eve, God tells Adam and Eve not to eat from the fruit that's from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as they say, but I think it's more good and bad. And she subsequently looks at the tree and she sees now how desirable the tree is in the 6th verse of the 3rd chapter, more specifically 6c, because it's a specific clause in that greater verse. She sees how desirable, the tree is to attain insight or knowledge, right? So the word that is used there is the root hamad, okay? And so Muhammadim, as I mentioned, it falls under the category of words that the plural form have an abstract meaning, as I've been saying, right? And with abstract nouns, the plural often refers to a characteristic or a condition. Now, upon doing research, right, for this episode, I ran into another essay that was written by 2 individuals, Blasius Abin, and pardon me if I mispronounce the second name, Suryanika Aristas Pasuhuk. Now, they wrote a paper also refuting this notion that Prophet Muhammad was prophesied in Song of Songs. And, the paper, it was a good paper. However, well, they seem to be of Christian background when you read the paper. But there's some propositions that they make that I disagree with. So in contrast to their propositions, myself, I assert that the Hebrew term Muhammadim has a semantic parallel with the Arabic cognate Muhammad. In their paper, they say that Muhammadim in the Hebrew doesn't have any semantic relationship with the Arabic Muhammad. Now, that's false because, as I've just shown, Muhammad in Arabic and Muhammadim in Hebrew, they both have their origin from the stem root Muhammad, right? And as such, there is a semantic relationship, right, between Muhammad and Muhammadim. However, okay, where I refute, okay, Ahmedidat is that the semantic, in spite of the semantic relationship, right? Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 16 is not, first of all, one, as we've mentioned initially in the beginning, it's not a prophetic text. It's a erotic love song or a poem. Therefore, it cannot be a prophecy by virtue of the context, okay, of the genre of the literature. Secondly, as opposed to Mr. Ahmedidat, Muhammadim and Muhammad, they're different word types. One, Muhammad, is a proper noun in Arabic, and Muhammadim, okay, is a common noun in Hebrew. And Muhammad, semantically, what it's in Arabic generally, it has to do with praise, etc., right? And worthiness. Muhammadim, although it can also have, depending, okay, on the context and the morphology, can denote, okay, this idea of praise and worthiness. But in the context that it's in, and Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 16, Muhammadim is a common noun, which is an abstract or part of the category of the abstract plurals, okay, that are conveying the fullness of the idea of desirable, of being desirable. Hence, to conclude, so when I'll read my translation again. This is my loved one. This is my fellow, daughters of Jerusalem. His mouth is of sweetness, and he is of attractiveness. So he is of attractiveness. It's a woman talking about her man. And our common English language today in 2024, the way that you would say this is she's basically saying that this man, in her view, he's sexy, he's fine. He's so damn fine. He's telling these other women in Jerusalem how fine and how sexy and how desirable that this man is to her. This is what's being conveyed here. So this has nothing to do with the prophet. And finally, or lastly, this text was most likely written 900 to 1,000 years before the birth of Muhammad in the 7th century of our common era. So how can there be a connection between what's happening in this text and Muhammad, who was born approximately 900 years later? So, ladies and gentlemen, conclusively, Muhammadim, or that is used as and translated generally as desirable or desirableness, and I've translated it as attractiveness. It is basically conveying, that's the idea that is conveying the word Muhammadim. It's not talking about the Prophet Muhammad. It's simply expressing the idea of a woman yearning sexually or erotically for her lover, which is this man. They are nameless, actually, and the Song of Song or Song of Solomon. So I hope that I've done justice to this text, and I hope I've properly conveyed this refutation of the notion that Muhammad is prophesied not only in the biblical corpus, but more specifically in the Song of Songs. I'll see y'all in the next episode, and we're going to have more of such topics, right? Topics about the history of the biblical corpus, the history of the ancient Near East and antiquity, and the history of the ideas that are conveyed in the Bible. Why? Why is that important as I go? Because in spite of the project of secularism in the West, religion is not going anywhere, right? And from my perspective, as I've said in previous episodes, there is religiosity, right? Seems to be intrinsic to our nature as humans, right? So this is something that we can't undo with, not anytime soon. As long as we are what we are, we will be religious. And furthermore, let me look at this, if you don't mind. Right now, as we speak, 31% of the world population are still Christian. 24% or 25% are Muslims. About 15% are Hindus. So you see, religion is not going anywhere. Hence, it is important that we get a proper understanding, because these religious ideas, they have roots, right? And in order to, from my perspective, to properly adapt them and appropriate them in our time, we need to understand their origins and the origins of the ideas, and possibly try to understand what the ideas were trying to convey initially so we can use them today. So again, I leave you. I'm Gandhi the Zoe, and this is the Principles of a Prophets podcast. I say peace until next time.